Okay, awesome. Welcome everyone to our webinar 18. We have a couple really great presentations put on by Rik Devreese for Clearinghouse and the European Forest Institute. Rik, are you able to share your screen?
I will give it a try.
Awesome.
Okay. So you should see the screen now. Okay.
Yes.
Do I start or do we wait a couple of more minutes?
I think we can go ahead and start, and I'll just be letting people in as they come into the waiting room.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Tessa.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning to you in the States. I'm not sure if we have other people from Europe in the room today or from other parts of the world. Good afternoon or good evening to you then. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to present the European Forest Institute and our flagship project when it comes to urban forests, the Clearinghouse project. So I will start with the European Forest Institute, EFI. So we are, who are we? Who is the European Forest Institute? Well, it's a Europe-based organization, an international research organization with how many offices throughout Europe, 5-6 offices around Europe and 1 office in Kuala Lumpur. Working on forest research, but also translating forest research towards policy and a bit to practice. EFI is both an international research organization itself, but also a network of national research organizations throughout Europe, but also some partners from China and the Americas as part of or member of EFI. Also, the science policy work is very important for us. Although we are called European Forest Institute, there is not a direct link to the European Union or the European Commission. We have a very strong working relationship with the European Commission, and the European Commission is also one of our most important donors. 28 European states or member states to the European Forest Institute, and so they co-define the way or the route we follow. And as I said, we have 115 member organizations, which are national forest research organizations, universities, forest agencies, and so on. The headquarters is in Joensuu in Finland, in a very forested area, close to the Russian border. We have, unfortunately, the office in Bordeaux has been shut down 1 year ago, but we have offices in Barcelona, Brussels, and Bonn. Although living quite close to Brussels, I'm connected to the Bonn office. And there is, interested for this public, there is an upcoming facility in Rome, which will be working on the concept of biocities, combining, on the one hand, urban forestry, the use of trees in the cities, but on the other hand, also the use of wood in buildings and so on as a sustainability approach. EFI is working on 3 themes. The aspect of bioeconomy, as I said, the use of wood, and not only for building, but also for other purposes. Governing the forests and resilience of forests. So this, well, the way we work is in the vision of working towards a world where forests significantly contribute to sustainable well-being. So this is not only a focus on economy or wood production, but it's also looking or helping or supporting the use of forests and forest products for a more sustainable and better world. And through, well, the mission of connecting knowledge to action. We're also contributing to knowledge, we're also producing knowledge, but connecting the knowledge to action, as I said, mainly through policy, is our most important mission. So we're working on an ambitious forest research and innovation area by supporting, on the one hand, by supporting the European Forest Research Organization, so national or regional research organizations with resources, with capacities, with infrastructure. They need to maximize their scientific, but also the societal impact. And for instance, one way we work is to translate input from the members, from the national or regional forest research organizations into research programs at the European level. Second important tool or aspect of our work is the science developing or contributing to science-informed policies to increase the relevance and importance of forest-related research, and to have them integrated, or to have the outcomes integrated in European policies, support policymakers in decisions or in decision-making related to forests, but also to other sustainabilities or wider sustainability discussions, but also to support practitioners in a transition towards a circular bio-based society. And finally, a very important topic too is awareness in the society on forests, on the impact of forests, on the positive impact of forests on society, through media work, to blog posts, and so on. So as I said, I'm working in the office in Bonn, which is the former capital of Germany, where we are working on two of the three main themes, being the governance aspect, or the governance team, and the resilience team. I will come back to this a bit later, talking about urban forestry and nature-based solutions. Also, these two aspects are part of our work, or we are translating or integrating nature-based solutions both in the resilience program and in the governance program, a bit less in the bioeconomy. I've been referring to this new upcoming BioCities program, which will be, or facility, which will be translating research towards cities, towards urban areas, but also towards city planners, towards landscape architects or architects, on how to use wood-based products, forest-based products, but also forest-based services for more sustainable cities. The bioregions facility, they're similar, but more on a regional network, and this one is more also looking in, for instance, strengthening the economies of forest-rich areas or of the forest sector in more rural areas. We're also working a lot on the flagged and red topics, which are dealing with avoided deforestation in the tropics, and also on forest genetics. Well, we'll not say more on this here, because this is less related to the NATURA thematics. But also important and upcoming or an important aspect of the work at EFI, and which is very recent, since the beginning of this year, is working with the Forest Europe team. Forest Europe is a network of European states which are collaborating on forest issues. When it comes to forestry, it's a bit difficult in the sense that when it comes to forestry, it's a bit difficult in Europe, in the sense that the European Commission has not really competence on forestry. It has competence on agriculture, but on forestry, it has a more facilitating and advisory role. The European Commission also has a very important competence on biodiversity. So you see that, well, there is always a link with forestry, but forestry as a competence is not really within the European Constitution, which has led to the development of the Forest Europe process, which is a bit parallel institution to the European Commission when it comes to forestry. Yes, this is a bit our team. I will not go into depth here. You on the right-hand side, you see the urban forestry team, which is well, not the biggest team, also not the smallest team. But of course, we are aiming to grow the urban forestry team within the European Forest Institute. Some strategic topics at the resilience team. Well, one of them is urban forestry. I will come to this later on. First strategic topic is climate and global change, with a focus on risks and disturbances. Forest fires is a very important aspect in this work, but also the impacts of change on forest socio-ecological systems and adaptation and mitigation strategies to enhance and restore the capacity to provide ecosystem services. The second aspect is biodiversity. How can forest policies and forest management practices enhance biodiversity, for example, through integrated forest management, but also through protecting and setting aside forests for biodiversity reasons. An interesting tool of this work is the Marteloscope network, which is a network of I think around 50, 60, 70 sites in forests throughout Europe in different ecotopes, which can be used as a kind of training facility, training site without, an online training facility or online training site where we have been developing tools to train and to do forest management practices in a virtual setting. And finally, then the forest at the urban-rural interface, where I'm then representing the urban forestry topic. We're also looking at the whole continuum from rural areas to over peri-urban areas to urban areas. We are discussing aspects like the impact of abandoning the land and natural reforestation versus intensification and so on. The governance team is then, working on four topics. Of course, there's a lot of overlap with the resilience topics. The first one is on global forest and environmental governance. It's looking into forest-related policies and governance. But also on how to involve the private sectors. How can the private sector be regulated through policies? How can public policies facilitate the private sector? A second topic is similar, but at the European level. So what is the impact of European forests policies? How can we support European decision-making when it comes to forests and so on? So we are not only looking there at policy implementation, but also the impact on the ground. Also, of course, there's a link with conflict between biodiversity protection, for instance, and wood production. Third topic is the forest and land use conflicts and conflict resolution, as I already introduced. And finally, the fourth topic is on societal perceptions and involvement. What are the societal demands and perceptions when it comes to forest and forest-related ecosystem services? What are the drivers of land use? What are the drivers of conservation? And what governance or innovative governance approaches can be used to align forest management and forest policy with societal demands and perceptions? And of course, there's also a strong link with the urban forestry world here, as societal demands and perceptions towards urban forests or pre-urban forests are usually more outspoken than to rural forests. So this is a short introduction of what we are doing. If you want to follow our work, but also as an example of the outreach we do to, on the one hand, decision makers, and but also practitioners and the general public. This is the resilience blog, which is quite active. It's published both in English and German, with most of the articles being in English. So I would encourage you to follow our blog for more updates on all the work we're doing in the Bonn office. I will shortly introduce three main projects that we are working on urban forestry, or we have four main projects. The clearinghouse, as I said, is the flagship project, but that will be the next presentation. So I will introduce three other initiatives that we are running. The first one is the European Forum on Urban Forestry, which was originally our link to this NATURA network. I understood that there was a presentation planned for this slot on IFUF, as we call it. So I will not go into depth here what IFUF is doing, but EFI is hosting IFUF. There is a memorandum of understanding between EFI and the European Forum on Urban Forestry to support and facilitate IFUF from the Bonn office of EFI. And well, maybe the most important point to mention here is the upcoming forum in Belgrade in May next year. And let's hope we can finally meet again in person with the European Forum on Urban Forestry. The second project that we are running is a U-Forest project. This is a project funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. The project is looking at, or the finality of the project is to support more innovative entrepreneurship in urban forestry in Europe, but also beyond. So therefore, we are co-creating some training programs, trying to collect lots of the knowledge which is already available around urban forestry, and bring this knowledge to practitioners, but also to entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs in the urban forestry world. This project is looking at four major themes. The first one is urban landscape planning. The second one is forest ecology. The third one is socioeconomics, and finally, last but not least, is information and communication technologies. So from these four angles, in these four teams, or from these four angles, we are bringing together students, researchers, people who are already having a business, and these four teams, with a link to urban forestry, but also students and people who are interested to start up their own business. There will be an e-learning course next year around this time, and a specialization program in person, hopefully at the Polytechnical University in Milan, Italy, and also with collaboration of the University of Barcelona. And we will also be developing an urban forestry challenge where we are challenging cities and entrepreneurs to plant trees in new or existing urban forests throughout Europe. And one of the main outcomes, or maybe the main outcome of this project, will be the EU Forest Alliance bridging and providing a network for existing and prospective entrepreneurs in urban forestry. And finally, one more project, which is already quite advanced, is the Green for Sea or Green for Care project, also an Erasmus Plus project that is looking into aspects of green care, with a very broad perspective, also looking into the role of agriculture or social agriculture for green care, looking into forest-based health, green care in urban green areas, and so on. These are the topics that we are looking into. What we want to achieve also here is facilitating entrepreneurship in this field. We see, for instance, in Europe, we see a lot of new people starting a forest bathing practice, for instance. So there are lots of ideas. Unfortunately, this is not the most lucrative business. So bringing together people with these ideas, with people who have a more entrepreneurial mind, can help to develop this in a bit more profitable approach, probably. So I stop my first intervention here, and maybe we have some time for questions.
Yes, we do have a few minutes for questions. So if you have any thoughts, questions, please just call them out.
I have a question. Can you go into more detail about the kinds of businesses that have been coming together in this U Forest initiative?
Yeah, thank you, Elvia, for your question. Well, on the one hand, we have the consortium, which submitted the project proposal. You can see the consortium on the lower bottom of the slide. This includes universities, but also SMEs like Green City Watch, Nature-Based Solutions Institute, headed or co-headed by Cecil Konijnendijk, but also Forest Design in Romania. As the project is quite recent, it started the 1st of January. We are still developing the project, and we are preparing to reach out to other companies and SMEs, I think from mid next year. But who are we aiming at? This is very broad. This can be landscape contractors, but it can also be, well, also for people working with forest health or forest bathing. There is potential for them here, I think. Forests, people who are working with forest ecology, but or people who are developing education activities in urban forests or urban green areas, it can also be part of this alliance. I hope this answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I
Hi,
have a
Rik.
question. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Look, it's really interesting. I like the concern you have to involve SMEs and organizations that are innovating in the area. I think that's going to be really important to ensure what happens is both sustainable, but also a viable financial model underpinning it. And I think the urban focus is almost a question of reach. We know with NATURA and Europark and other interests, we're really concerned with stewardship of our natural resources like forests, but the particular emphasis that a urban forest can have in terms of connecting citizens to nature in an efficient way is certainly of interest in terms of mental health and health. Thanks for raising it.
Yes, thank you for the comment. Well, just as an add-on on this, so here in Belgium, where I'm living, we had an economic valuation of the Natura 2000 areas. Maybe you have heard this before from me, but so for the rest of the group, we had a monetary valuation of Natura 2000 areas. Natura 2000 is the network of protected European habitats, which is also including forests, natural forests. And this human health, or the potential impact on human health, is particularly in urban and peri-urban areas, the highest economic impact is related to this public impact or the potential impact on public health. And I'm talking to forest owners in an urban area or peri-urban areas, I'm saying to them, well, you better stop growing, or you better stop growing wood, but you are producers of human health and public health. You're not anymore producers of wood. Of course, the wood is still relevant, but yeah, the economic or the potential economic impact on a macro level of health is so high that we know it's important, but it's still underestimated, I think.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hi, Rick. Thank you very much for your presentation. I was wondering if you're in the resilience area that you talked about, if you're doing work on risk and disturbance and potential nature-based solutions of urban forests, or do those two areas not intersect?
Sorry, Nancy, I was still taking a note from Ager's interesting comments. Sorry. So your question was, can you just repeat your question?
Yeah. Yes, I can. So
Sorry.
I was interested in the risk and disturbance area in your list of resilience projects that you're working on, but I didn't see that there was any intersection on the using nature-based solutions for resilience to disturbance of urban forests. And I was wondering if that is just not something that is part of the urban forest mandate.
It is, but we are not really working on this at the moment. So I think it's a very important aspect, but this is still underdeveloped at the moment in what we are doing. Well, on the one hand, this whole discussion not discussion, but issue of forest fires, I think it's maybe more an issue in the United States of the forest fires coming close to the residences and the communities, although also here, more in the Mediterranean, we have forest fires coming very close to where people live. But also, yeah, the use of forest and trees as a nature-based solution to tackle risks is interesting, but we are not really working on this at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's also, I mean, there's so much that's gone on, urban forests for mental health and urban forests for biodiversity promotion, and sometimes urban forests for carbon sequestration, although we know that's not, a major impact, but less attention on what's really, what makes the ecological resilience of urban forests, what those characteristics might be and how they might work for or against resilience of cities to disturbances, climate-related disturbances and extreme events, for example. I think we don't know that much, and sometimes it's negative. The urban forest is more of a risk associated with, for example, high winds or things like that. So I'm just curious because I think there's a big area of potential research there that
yeah, definitely.
could work on.
On the one hand, we are a bit less risk aversive here in Europe than in the States, I think. So, of course, people are not happy when trees are falling and so on cars, but well, it's a bit less of a discussion in public. So it's therefore also a bit less high on the political and the research agenda. I think what is important, what in my opinion, my personal opinion is very important is the from a resilience perspective is the link between water supply and the urban heat island effect. You're marketing urban trees as air conditioners, which is of course very true and very important, but they can only condition the air if there is sufficient water supply. And what we have seen here in Europe, not this year, then we had way too much water, but the years before, 2-3 years before, that the water supply was so low that trees are dying.
Yeah.
So, and they also don't, even if they are not dying, they don't have the water supply to really do the evapotranspiration and to reduce the temperature. So
Right.
I think this is some very important research that that we should
certainly.
do, and if I would be very happy to find funding for this type of research.
Great. That is an important omission of what I was talking about. Of course, there is research on urban forest for extreme heat mitigation. So thanks for bringing that up. Thank you.
And I think we should move on to the second presentation, but if you have any other comments or questions, please just put them in the chat. Otherwise, maybe you can swing around and ask them at the end. Are you ready to do the second presentation, Rik?
Yes.
Awesome, take it away.
Browsing through my open presentations. Oops. Okay, share screen. So there we go. Clearinghouse, the senior European collaboration towards the use of urban forests as nature-based solutions. This is, as I said, our main project. It's funded by the Horizon 2020 funding in Europe. We are a sister project of Regreen, or Regreen is a sister project of us. So they have there's quite some overlap with what they are doing, although our focus is on tree-based ecosystems in urban and peri-urban areas and how they can work as nature-based solutions. Well, this is not new for you, I think, so I'm not really going into detail here, and we'll even skip this slide. So urban forests and urban trees, well, you also all know definitely what is on the right side of the slide, but historically in Europe, we have a very long history, and even the Romans were using, or the ancient Egyptians were using trees as already as a kind of nature-based solution to provide shade in the cities, for instance, to produce food and so on. So there is a very long tradition of trees and forests in around cities and towns. But more recent, well, when I say more recent, I would say the last 200 or 300 years, this ecosystem services aspect of urban forests and urban trees as tree trees has a bit been undervalued. The focus was a bit more on the use of trees as for aesthetical reasons to make cities more nice and to beautiful. So we see this changing societal demands for nature in cities and towns, but also for the services provided by nature, and definitely the services provided by trees. So what the project wants to contribute to is how we can facilitate this production or provisioning of urban ecosystem services and nature-based solutions by urban trees and urban forests. So we have been working with the IUCN concept of nature-based solutions, which is also adopted by the European Commission. Solutions inspired and supported by nature, providing all kinds of benefits and building resilience. Maybe important and interesting for you to know is that what we term urban forests as nature-based solutions is all kind of tree-based ecosystems. So starting from the single tree in the back garden, including the street tree, trees and groups of trees in parks up to the small woods in urban areas or parks, but also the forests in or around cities and towns like the Vienna forest in Austria or the Southern forest here in Brussels. Our project is a 48 months project with 26 partners, around 20 from Europe and around 6 from China. We're working in 11 countries with 10 case study cities. Sorry, and our budget is around 5.5 million euros. We are working with 2 coordinators, one on the European side, being the European Forest Institute, and one on the Chinese side, being the Chinese Academy of Forestry. Well, and Clearinghouse is a nice acronym for collaborative learning and research, information sharing and governance on how urban forests nature-based solutions support Sino-European urban futures. The aims and the outcomes of the project is identifying and filling key gaps in knowledge, and building on the outcomes of the projects to suggest improvements as well in policy and management. To develop tools that are applicable both in China and Europe and hopefully worldwide to support the whole cycle of UFNBS implementation. So starting from planning, design, and going in finally into the management of urban forests and urban trees. Also, and as COVID passed along well, we are already working on a project. We are also looking into the impact of COVID on the use of urban forests, but also a bit thinking what beyond the pandemic. Very interesting work which we are doing at the moment is analyzing the data of a Sino-European societal survey on the perception, use, and needs regarding urban forests and urban trees. Unfortunately, we're still analyzing, so I cannot give a lot of details at the moment. But why is this interesting? I think there's already a lot of perception studies done, but all these were local. Or regional or national. This is the first, European and Chinese-wide study. So we will also not only be able to compare China with Europe, but also being able to compare within Europe different states, but also different types of environments, for instance, rural versus urban areas and so on. What we aim to develop or have to develop is includes 4 thematic guidelines, one on cost-effective urban ecosystem restoration, how to apply trees as nature-based solutions here, mechanisms for public and stakeholder engagement when it comes to UFNBS, management guidelines, and finally, a guideline on change management and institutional reform for better management of nature-based solutions. Yes, and this final one is seems to be very interesting and important, really, to get city departments or government departments and agencies more in line of being tree friendly and nature friendly, not only having the tree department or the nature department, but also having the, for instance, the road agency or the water agency aligned when it comes to implementing urban forests and urban trees. So as I said, we have 5 case study cities in China and 5 in Europe. They all have their own characteristics, of course. So we will not only be looking at the difference between Europe and China, but also the difference between, and definitely within Europe, the difference between the different cities within Europe, but also within China. There are more interesting differences that we can look into. Also, all this comparative research is ongoing. So I cannot bring you much of the details. I will skip this slide. So clearinghouse has 5 steps. Well, all of this is on its way. This was not how to say, not linear, or this is not a linear project starting with step 5 and ending with starting with step 1 and ending with step 5. All the steps are more or less running in parallel. So I will be focusing a bit on the upcoming or already finished outcomes. One of them is urban forests nature-based solutions typology. We all know, I think, that it's very difficult to make a typology which is fitting all the requests and requirements. So therefore, the typology that we have been developing is quite interesting, because it's a typology which is is including multiple angles and multiple aspects. As this is still in revision as an article, I'm not going to go into details here, but the interesting point is that it's following, and now I'm going a bit beyond my own competence, but it's following what is called ontology web language typologies, which means that we can have multiple entries and multiple criteria to classify urban trees. So we are looking into what type of area do we have, what type of use is the urban forests, what type of management, what type of restoration activities, and so on. Also, what type of ecosystem services. So if you are interested to learn more on this, unfortunately, we had to align Chinese and European audiences. So it's at 8 o'clock in the morning in Europe, so in the middle of the night in the States. But we have a workshop on the 7th of October where we will give full details on the typology and ask for comments on this typology. If you are interested, we will have a recording, and you can just register and receive the recording afterwards. The second very interesting outcome, I think, is the outcomes or the results of a literature review the colleagues at Berlin University, Humboldt University in Berlin have been doing. They have been looking into, well, 422 papers on urban forests and urban trees, with the focus on Europe and China, but as you can see on the picture or on the figure here on the left, it also is also including outcomes of lots of other countries. So on the one hand, they've been looking into the geographic context, but also in the NBS context and the research context, and very interesting also in the tree-specific information. So which kind of species is used to develop or to provide a certain outcome or a certain solution to a certain challenge. This is should be available under the URL here, which is review.clearinghouseproject.eu, where you can browse through the 422 papers, where you can also select several criteria, and then you receive the outcome or the result of this selection. We are open to have this selection expanded and updated. So if you think your paper or your research is missing, you can always send it to me, and we will have it included in the next update, which is not yet planned anyhow. But also from the European Commission, there was a request to keep this live and ongoing. So there will be definitely an update coming. A next very interesting outcome is some mapping on how does the forest share in several or lots of European cities. How is it distributed, and how does it relate to the population? This report is also being transferred at the moment into a manuscript for publication. So I'm not able, I think, to share it with you at the moment. But yeah, as you can see, there is a lot of, well, the distribution is very, very broad, and some cities have a very good share of green and other cities have a very limited share of green. This kind of this was a very interesting exercise, but it also showed or confirmed what we already knew, that the data availability in Europe for this kind of exercises is quite limited, and it's quite difficult to find details for every city. So the collaborative aspect is very important in Clearinghouse. On the one hand, the collaboration between China and Europe, which is quite heavily impacted by COVID, unfortunately, but also within the case study cities, we have been running several co-design and co-learning workshops. There will be citizen science application running, and which is also interesting for you. Hopefully next year, we hope to launch a call for cities and practitioners and researchers to have some kind of twinning activities between, for instance, an American city, European city, and a Chinese city, to really physically come together and discuss their own challenges in one of the three cities in the field. But yeah, let's see how the situation is next year. We'll also be looking into business models, looking for innovative business models. Continuing the discussion we had a bit before on this green health or green care. It's very much, or it's very well proven that there is an impact, an economic impact, for instance, on the healthcare budgets. But it's very, very difficult to have the health sector, for instance, paying for a green intervention or for development of a new park or for opening new paths in a forest. But also for instance, this forest-based therapists to get clients and to have the clients, or to have the health insurance reimburse the clients. So this kind of business models is where we are looking at how to really transfer the money from the ones who are making the savings, for instance, in this kind of the public health, but also in the kind of water management and flood protection, to the people who are doing the investments and the people who are managing or owning the green areas. This is research or an activity that we started quite recently. So if you have interesting cases, you can always send them to me. But I cannot say a lot here at the moment. We will also be developing a decision support tool for UFMBS implementation. So the idea is to have an application which allows to calculate different scenarios to implement or to manage urban forest and urban trees as nature-based solutions. There will be one tool which will be much more detailed, and a second tool which will be more a kind of quick scan and global benchmarking tool based on the IUCN global standard for nature-based solutions. So this one will be easier and quicker to fill in by a city or by practitioners, but also by, for instance, local citizens or a residents group or whatever who are interested in this aspect for whatever reasons. And one of the final items I want to share with you, which is, I think, interesting for the whole community worldwide. It's an education package. The authors call it an inspiration package. I've noticed that the link has disappeared, but if you go to our website, you can find it, or I can paste it in the chat later. So this is an education package for 10 to 14 years old people or students who are interested, or whose educators are interested in trees and forests. It goes beyond the traditional environmental education of how to measure a tree and so on. But it's also really trying to use a forest or tree-based ecosystem as a learning environment for all kinds of topics. It explains how you can use a park for mathematics, for teaching mathematics, how you can use a park for teaching language and so on. So at the moment it's available only in English, but we're working in 2 translations in Italian, Polish, Spanish, and so on. So yeah, we will keep you updated. If you visit the website regularly, you can see that new translations are being uploaded. So this ends my introduction into the Clearinghouse project. Shishi, thank you. And yeah, I hope we have still some time for questions, and I keep this maybe open sorry, for you. Of course, we are also all kind of social media, so you're welcome. Or I would like to invite you to follow us on one of these media, or you can register for a newsletter which is appearing every 3 to 6 months. You can register for the newsletter through the website. Thank you.
We have about 7 minutes left for questions, so.
Can I have a question? Thank you, Rik, for the great presentation. And it's really interesting to see this like comparative studies that's actually being implemented in different contexts. And so what I found really interesting in one of the meetings that we had for the NATURA was a regional node workshop for the Asian Pacific region, and then not just China, but in many, and we had like a case studies from different cities in Asia, in the Asia Pacific region. And then what I found interesting was that when they think about nature-based solutions, it was very limited in terms of like rainwater management in their context, or the water resources management a lot. So, you know, like through this project using trees in the urban area, like, did you like see any big kind of differences, big understanding MBS in different contexts between European context and Asian context? And was there any like additional effort that you had to go through to, you know, make sure these are nature-based solutions that needs like maintenance and operation in the long term?
I'm not sure if I can answer your question already. Maybe we have to note it down and come back to this within 2 years when the project is ending, as we're still doing this comparative research. We did a review of other projects, other initiatives, in both gray literature and academic literature. And one of the outcomes was that the Chinese nature-based solutions, our urban forest project, were much more technological, as you were also mentioning. Yeah, this is more, well, I would say Bosco Verticale or green building types of initiatives, where in Europe we are much more working with, well, putting trees in the ground and see what is the impact of this. And of course it has an impact on the management. Some other outcome, I think, is that, which is more confirming what we already knew, I think, is that a big issue, a big challenge is that there is budget, or there is more budget for planting trees and installing nature-based solutions overall than for the management. And this is this is not only for the more technological MBS, but also for single street tree or forest management. This is a budget which is much more under pressure when budget cuts have to be made than planting new trees. And of course there is a link with how policy or politics is working, because it's much nicer for a politician or a mayor to plant a tree than to prune a tree or to unfortunately have to cut down a tree. So yeah, I'm not sure if this really is answering your question.
No, thanks for sharing. Sorry if I missed, but how long is the project year for this project?
The project is 4 years. We are exactly halfway at the moment. Well, maybe we'll have some. Well, maybe we have some 1 or 2 month extension, but will be 4 years.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
It looks like Claire Kazansky has raised her hand.
Yeah, hi Rick. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's really exciting to hear about all of this work. My ears perked up a little bit when you were talking about this effort you have underway and looking at maintenance in particular and the associated ecosystem services. And I just wanted to say we're at the Nature Conservancy, we're really increasingly interested in the role that maintenance of not only young trees, which I think receive a lot of attention, but also mature trees, what maintenance of mature trees in cities, what the impacts of that are for their ability to provide services. And so I'm just really interested to see what you all learn. And I don't know if there's anything, more about that in particular that you could comment on as a teaser for where you might be going with your work, but just wanted to highlight that piece as an area that we're excited to hear more about.
Yes, Claire, thank you for your question. Well, I'm sorry that I think I will not be able to answer your question within 2 years. Yeah, this is a bit linking to what Nancy said. Nancy had as a comment to the previous presentation. This project is, well, a bit more looking into governance aspects and planning aspects than into really management aspects. So yeah, I think it's very interesting to know. I think we have more and more evidence that bigger trees, or we know that bigger trees provide more ecosystem services. So we have to find ways to manage them and to be sure, or to be sure that they can grow old and get big and really provide what they can provide as ecosystem services. This is also a bit linking, I think, to well, the comment I gave, or the reply I gave to Kim, but also to my earlier comment about this, how to raise the money to and to fund this management and to transfer money from the ones who really are really profiting from trees to the ones who have to manage the trees. A couple of weeks ago, I said this to some colleague: if we ever find this magical bullet, I think this is can be very supportive to have a really breakthrough of trees and with nature-based solutions overall. When you relate it, well, for instance, solar panels, investing in solar panels, yeah, you have an investment to make, but from the moment you have this investment, there is some kind of return of an investment. For trees, it's much, well, there is also a return on investment, but you don't see it directly. You don't see it in the meter. So this is really a challenge, I think, which we unfortunately will not be able to tackle with Clearinghouse, I'm afraid.
Well, thank you everyone for your participation and questions and comments. And thank you, Rik, for the wonderful presentations. We are at time. So yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for attending and presenting.
Thank you for the opportunity, and have a nice day, rest of the day. how long it is still taking.
Thank you.
All right, yeah,
Thank
we
you.
have the whole day ahead of us.
Yes,
Yep.
it's a bit difficult with this global audience, but
Yes.
yes, have a nice day,
Thank-
and I hope I've given you some inspiration for
Yeah,
your day
no,
today.
it's great. Thanks
Absolutely.
so much.
And have a nice evening in Europe. Thank you.
Good
Everyone.
night.
Thanks so much. Well done.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.